Hello, everybody. Welcome to Shifting Happens. I'm Rory. I'm not Baxty hosting today. Baxty is having a lovely holiday, and I am taking his spot. And I'm joined here today with AJ and Marshall, also known as Double Wave Yellow. And today we're going to talk about the news that we've all missed, we've all known about. We didn't get to discuss it here right at that moment in time, but we're going to discuss it and hear our opinions on it. So our first topic we're going to discuss is the Red Bull driver saga. And if anyone has been living under a rock in this Christmas period and not has shut themselves away from F1 at this time, Sergio Pérez has been let go of his duties at Red Bull, which was kind of one of the worst kept open secrets in the paddock. Like, in the sense that we knew it was going to happen, but we just didn't know the official time. So Sergio Pérez, who has been at Red Bull since 2021, has left the team and has now been replaced by one of their junior drivers, Liam Lawson, who was partnered with Yuki Tsunoda, who replaced Daniel Ricciardo, who was partnered with Yuki Tsunoda at Racing Bulls, which is actually not Racing Bulls yet, but will probably be called Racing Bulls. And now it's kind of like in the fan base, it kind of, between us all, we kind of had these debates and discussions about what we're kind of thinking, is this the right move for Red Bull, putting Lawson in the car? But AJ, I'm going to come to you first. What did you first think of Sergio Perez's exit from Red Bull?
Honestly, I think it was a long time coming. It should have been done earlier in the season. I still don't get why they went through the entire charade of, having to renew his contract and then go through that entire drama of like, oh no, I'm here to stay. I still have a contract, yada, yada, yada. That entire nonsense, it just made no sense because the performances and everything it looked like a long time coming. There was no justification in any way, shape, or form for him to stay in that seat. Even if they didn't want to kick him out entirely, do that regular trademark Red Bull swap between Red Bull and Toro Rosso. Been done before. Why can't it be done again with Checo? Should have done it a long time ago. Could have given, the other drivers around a shot to see how they perform in the Red Bull. Which I'm going to hold back on that for a little bit, but I have my opinions on who took the seat. So, yeah.
So, Marshall, I'm going to ask. I'm going to let you join the conversation and ask. Do you like what AJ said? Do you think Sergio Perez was, like you said, he wasn't in the greatest part of form and his confidence was down? Do you think Red Bull should have given his contract? Or, like Baxi said, did they want to keep Sergio Perez's lucrative sponsorship deals?
I mean, I think Baxi got it right on there. I mean, there's commercial considerations. There's a partnership with Carlos Slim. They wanted it to work. I don't think Checo's useless, contrary to his reputation right now. I think that car and that team situation just became untenable for him. Once a driver loses their confidence in the machine and the team, it rarely goes well or gets back on the rails. Like I can't think of any good example of a driver that just like loses their confidence in a car or a team and then gets it back. It's just one of those things where it was clearly over, but both sides wanted it to work, that they kept it going for far too long. And I feel bad for Checo because I think his F1 career is probably done. And I don't think that he deserved this sort of ending to his chapter. I think that certain drivers perform better in machinery that is not the best on the grid. And I think that Checo just might be one of those kind of guys that's like a midfield wonder, a Giancarlo Fisichella, one might say, where, whenever they find themselves in a top team, they don't have that elite gear to take them to, Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton level, but they are incredibly competent at getting the most out of midfield machinery. And I really think like he deserved better, but he was never going to get better at Red Bull. Like that dream was dying on the vine, and they were just, keeping it till the end of the season because, commercial obligations, sponsorship, the Mexican Grand Prix being late in the year. There's all sorts of considerations for why he had to stay. I think they had reconciled that they weren't going to win the constructor, so that was out the window anyway. And then they didn't have to, make that consideration from a performance standpoint. They just said, we're going to win the drivers' championship, and that's our cake and our cookies for this year. We're not in it for the constructors, and I think once they made that determination, there's no point at that late point in the season with like 5 or 6 or whatever races it was to go when they were doing the Lawson Ricardo shuffle. Like by that point, it's too late. So I get it. I feel bad for Checo because I always liked the guy, and I don't think he's as bad as the last few months have shown.
Yeah, and before bringing Fly in, it's Checo, before he got the Red Bull seat, was one of the best midfield drivers on the grid in that Force India Racing Point. And then, of course, he lost his seat to Sebastian Vettel at the time when Lawrence Stroll said he wanted another world champion in his team, and then and so forth. But I think it's like we'll circle back to how Checo will be remembered. Like you alluded to double wave that this could be his F1 career over, but we have another team joining in 2026 that we can discuss. But Fly, I want to kind of, what's your take on the Sergio Perez leaving Red Bull? Was it too late, too early? Could they have let him go? Maybe go into the 2025 season and see what happens. But it's
I think there's so many, not mixed emotions, but just mixed direction. I think we can see by this tweet that was put out on June 4th that he was extended. People thought it was too early. Maybe they thought Red Bull should have waited. But I think without question, the money does have to come into question. I mean, all we have to see how many sponsors have left, how much revenue has gone down, how many followers has gone down within the combined social media itself. Sergio Perez wasn't only Mexico. He is Mexico. He was basically not South America per se, but he was mostly Americas, right? That's why people flocked, especially with our races within this region, and they went overseas. And to not now have that, will it affect Red Bull? I think it will in the long run, but I think when your question, should they have waited? I want to say yes, but his results weren't great. Like, let's be honest here. Like, I think Wave said it best. The construction had already been revealed that even if they try, even if he had 3-4 consecutive good races, I would say within the last 2-3 months, it wasn't going to be enough. The way that McLaren was just so consistent, right? And race after race after race, we saw Max just outperform him, no matter where, right? Whether it be in regular track, whether it be in the rain in Brazil, where he had to start from the back. No matter what Sergio tried differently, either he got in his own way or other people got in his way. And it just felt like this relationship, something had to give. And so my thing is this now, and I don't know if we're going to jump into this. Whoever was going to replace him is going to have such a toll on them, because now we're all going to start remembering the past of Max Verstappen's previously, his previous P2 guys, and the direction that affected them, right? I mean, we've seen them kind of succeed in a way. Let's go ahead and say with Pierre Gasly. He bounced back from it, but not many people do. Alex Albon looks like he's going down a treadmill right now per se. But should have Red Bull waited for 2025? I don't think they wanted to wait, Roy. I think they gave this contract out, and they were hoping for, I guess, a more consistent Checo. And instead of you getting a more consistent Checo, you just got a dive bomb Checo. And they weren't going to let him go before Mexico. No way. Like, especially if you're going through Vegas, Austin, Brazil, Mexico. During that time, they weren't going to let him go because, let's be clear, a lot of sponsorships were awaiting all that revenue to pitch in to make it count. So should they have waited? I don't think they would have. Should he still be in the seat? I don't believe so. But again, there's other people on this grid, guys, that we can say, how in the world are you still driving an F1 car? I mean, we're not all, like our fathers don't own the business. So I mean, it is what it is. So yeah, that's my point.
Yeah, and I agree. It's with Sergio, like you said, like he had lot of sponsorships, a lot of activations, and we see how many he gets support in Austin over the years, Mexico, Las Vegas, and especially like you mentioned, like his form. He was very unlucky in the last few races because he had mechanical issues. In Abu Dhabi, he had a failure. I think in Brazil as well, he had a failure. In the last 5 races. So even when he was running in form, he just had those mechanical failures. Were kind of just dampen the season even more when it looked like he had an upturn in form, but then it happened like Ricardo in 2018, where his car decided just to kaput like many times. And like you mentioned, Fly, with drivers with confidence, we saw Pierre Gasly in this seat, like you mentioned, that he had a massive crash in testing in 2019. He couldn't really recover from it, and then he was swapped mid-season for Albon. Albon had to drive that Red Bull off the rails, and he couldn't catch Max. Yes, he got about 2 podiums, but still it wasn't enough for Red Bull. And then Perez came in outside of the pool to be a stopgap, and he kind of became. I think he became he was the most recent longest Red Bull driver at that team after Ricardo, because he stayed for 2021. That's if he extended into 2026, because this contract, like Matt Fly alluded to again, that it was signed in Monaco at the start of the summer. It was supposed to be. We thought it was going to be a 1+1, but it turned out it was going to be 2025 to 2026. And it's like thinking, why did Red Bull give him a 2-year extension when they could have just given him a 1-year extension just to see? But I think it was reported that this contract had more clauses in it, so they could actually get Checo out of the seat if they needed to. But it was like they couldn't. I think it was also a report, I forget by who, but he couldn't get in. They couldn't activate the release clause in the summer because Perez was still close to Max in points and so forth. But then in Christmas, they were easily able to get Max out of the seat. But I think we're going to jump into Perez's replacement. Actually, before we get into a replacement of Perez, I want to kind of ask you, all 3 of you, how will Sergio Perez be remembered? So if this is the end of his F1 career, I'm going to start with a double waved.
So how he will be remembered, unfortunately, is going to be this last couple of really struggling seasons. How he should be remembered is as the tire whisperer for Sauber and Force India, and that crazy, wonderful, secure win. Like, that is what I will remember Sergio Perez for. His Red Bull time had some early good moments. He had, a couple of race wins, and things were going good in 2022 until they weren't, and then 2023 started okay until it didn't. But it's really been few and far between. I see a lot of parallels between him and Danny Ricciardo, just in terms of going out on a whimper and having a great career, but it coming to an end in a way that, is ignominious, is not how it really should have panned out, and doesn't really reflect the quality of the driver. I think, I keep saying that Sergio is Giancarlo Fisichella, but he had the same sort of ending. Like, he raced at Force India, and he had a couple of great races. He had that one race in Belgium where he was awesome. But for the most part, he was there, but just kind of filling in time. And then he had that great opportunity to replace Luca Bador at Ferrari, who was replacing Massa, and he just did nothing with it. And then off and out of Formula One he went, always as a Ferrari driver, but as one of the worst replacement Ferrari drivers. And it's like, just ending your career in a top team in failure feels worse than ending it in a midfield team punching above your weight, which, you look at, David Coulthard, he ended his career head held high. He left, with racing for Red Bull for 4 years, and, he had not been in a top team for many years, but he led that team to their first podium, and he put them on the trajectory where they were going to be champions in the future. You know, David Coulthard can look back and say, you know what, I helped build Red Bull, but Checo just left Force India and left Racing Point, and it wasn't his choice. But wouldn't it have been a better story if he had been able to stay there and help build that program when they had Aston Martin backing? Like, I just wonder if there's an alternate universe where he could have managed to stay in that team. And I guess we can blame Stroll for that, Daddy Stroll. But yeah, I feel bad because I think that one of my favorite races in 2012 was the Malaysian Grand Prix, where he just absolutely could have won that race. Like, the Ferrari engine in the back and the contention whether he was allowed in a Sauber to pass a Ferrari is always going to be there. But, you know, that was an amazing, amazing Grand Prix, and he did some magical things in that Sauber. So I'm going to remember him for the 2012 Malaysian Grand Prix. That's what I'll choose to remember him for.
Yeah, and I wasn't watching F1 at the time, but I have gone back and watched that race. There was just like, was he allowed to overtake that Ferrari? And there was like the tension and so forth. But AJ, I'm going to pose a question, since like it's Pérez, when he went to Red Bull, he was brought in to be closer to Max, but also try and help win the constructors. But they didn't win the constructors in 2021, but he became the Minister of Defense for Max Verstappen. But he did become, when he joined after his stint up to leaving Red Bull, now he did become Mexico's most successful F1 driver. And I think he got multiple podiums. He was on the podium twice at Mexico, I think, or 3 times, I think, 2021, 22, and 23. But I think that is a positive that can be shown out, that he did get wins and podiums at Red Bull. So I think he can see there is some positive light in his Red Bull saga.
Yeah, so I don't think his time at Red Bull was bad. Like, I mean, if you're going to have your recency bias goggles on, the last 2 seasons are absolutely horrendous. And that if we want to track back to it and we want to pay attention to press conferences and interviews, it's not entirely his fault either. It's also the direction in which the car was developed. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, any one of you guys, Horner himself admitted at one point there was a fork in the road in 2022, that it was they keep going heavy on the front, or they listen to Checo and make the tweaks that needed to be made. They ended up ignoring it and going with what works best for the regulations, which, as we see now, probably wasn't the best decision to go with, right? But with that being said, he has always been, I think the trademark things about Checo will always be his ability to defend and his ability to look after his tires, similar to what Double said. And also at the same time, since I mentioned defense, I think Max mentioned it on in the comments over there, his 2021 defense versus Hamilton, that regardless of however you want to paint that race, however you want to talk about the chaos of that race, that defensive show from Checo versus Hamilton was absolutely amazing. Yes, the 2012 drive was also absolutely beautiful. I don't know, man. I think it's his time at Red Bull, in my opinion, is going to be very tainted because of the chaos that Red Bull have been in over the last year. It could have definitely ended on a better note, for sure. But I have my own opinions on the way Red Bull is being run and all those sort of things. We don't want to get too deep into those sort of stuff, but I think whatever situation behind the scenes, whatever it may be, whatever speculations are, whatever we believe, that is part and parcel of why Checo is that last 2 years of his career, if this is the end of his career, is going to be tainted. Otherwise, big shout out to what Baxty and Double were saying. absolute midfield maestro. Like, he put him in a midfield car, he's going to throw out insane levels of performance.
Yeah. So, as Baxi B says in the chat, one of our hosts, Pérez in, I think it was 2018, or the time when Force India was having issues with finances, Pérez stepped in, actually helped pay for the salaries of the staff at the time. So it showed Sergio's character as well, that he did care about the people he worked for, and Force India was like, I think I remember when he was at Force India, he was kind of the face of Force India in the sense that there was all the controversy in the back with the owners and so forth, but Pérez was always that beaming light in the sense that he was always going to get you a podium if you didn't expect he was going to get you a podium. I remember Azerbaijan 2018, where the two Red Bulls collided and Bottas' tire exploded, and Pérez just somehow happened in that 2018 Force India, which wasn't a very good car. And it's actually 2019, sorry, I think, that he managed to get, no, it's 2018, I'm getting my years mixed up, but he got the podium anyway, and it was just like that massive celebration for the team that later on in that year, that team had to be sold to Lawrence Stroll, and it was just like, and then we found out that he was, at the end of 2020, he was getting replaced out of his own, even having a contract, but that didn't matter at the time. But I think we're going to talk about his replacement at the moment. Liam Lawson, who has 11 F1 starts to his name, who is the fewest starts compared to Max's teammate, and it's the first teammate who's actually younger than Max Verstappen, I think. So and he's a massive fan of Lightning McQueen as well. But I'm going to come to you first, Fly, about Lawson. Is this the right move for Red Bull? We know Yuki Tsunoda, who's been in that car.
You're just giving me that question. Is it the right move for Red Bull? I mean, I don't even think Red Bull thinks it's a right move. I just feel like, they already made their decision on Checo. They were waiting for the end of the season in some ways to hand it out. I just feel like there was another driver in Ricard that would have possibly had shown, at least for this season. And I've said this before a couple of shows before. You can go ahead and say that Yuki Tsunoda in the previous seasons was just irate on the radio, just wasn't what the team was looking for. And yet this past offseason came back a different driver, different mentality, just a different person. And to see that he got points in Japan and the results that have been there for him this season, especially in that car. And yet he's had he went up against Danny Ricciardo, he went up against Liam Lawson. I mean, how many drivers have to go through two guys throughout the whole season? I mean, that's kind of unheard of. I think Yuki got snubbed, man. And so is it a right move for Red Bull? Again, I'm not hating on Liam Lawson, because I know in our threads and on Twitter, there's like a Liam Lawson fan base. And if I say the wrong things, they'll probably ban me from their stuff, whatever the case is. But I have nothing against Liam Lawson. I feel like Liam Lawson is fearless. I feel that Liam Lawson feels like he's ready, and he's ready for the challenge. But let's not forget, Pierre Gasly thought the same thing. Alex Albon thought the same thing. Daniel Ricciardo thought the same thing. Sergio Pérez, after year 2, thought the same thing. So you're now asking for a young driver with a fearless mentality to now go up against a 4-time world champion in a seat that is the most heated seat on the grid. Yes or no? To me, that second Red Bull seat, when you look at it from across the board, past McLaren, past Ferrari, and we're not going to go anywhere else, that second Red Bull seat will be the one question the entire season we're going to be watching closely. We're going to be critiquing. We're going to be talking about it. And we're going to go race by race, qualifying round after qualifying round, and asking ourselves, did they make the right decision? So to answer your question, did they make the right decision? I don't think they did. I think the most truthful one should have been Yuki Tsunoda. Should have been in that seat, not only because of his experience with the whole team in itself, but there's something that we're missing that Red Bull just don't want to also let him go, right? He's gotten offers and the team keeps rejecting them. Why is that? What are you afraid of? Why? Because you think you're Red Bull? Because what you won? You know what? Listen, that image of Horner and his team is gone, guys. Let's be honest here. That fearless, we're back for another century. I'm like, dude, you're not Mercedes. You're not gonna win 7 or 8. Let's be honest. And I know, Roy, you're an RB fan, and I mean no disrespect at all, but they got the wrong guy, man. And again, nothing against Liam, but I feel like Yuki should have been at least given an opportunity for at least half the season to prove himself. If it didn't work, Liam's right there. Put him in the UFC, and then we can both have this conversation saying at least both guys had an opportunity. But to go over him, I don't know. I don't feel like it was the right decision.
I totally agree. I think the situation could be a 2019 Red Bull all over again. That we could see Lawson. He swapped at the summer break, and I think they might bring in Yuki, and I think that's going to hurt Red Bull's ego and saying that we got it wrong. But I would like to see that happen. But yeah, like Baxi said, Yuki has, when he got into that Red Bull program, he was brought in under the Honda Driver Academy side, and he's been associated with Honda ever since. And we know that Honda is leaving Red Bull to go to Aston in 2026, and Honda have been very vocal in getting Yuki to drive, to do a test, which he did in the Abu Dhabi season there. So I'm going to bring Double Waved in to talk. Is Honda the reason why Yuki?
I mean, it's one of the reasons. But, I mean, Baxi hit on it. He's a Honda driver. Honda brought him in 2021. He's leaving the team, or they're leaving the team. Like, Honda's leaving the team after 2025. So you're in a position where you've got a driver who is linked to an engine partner that is no longer there. What do you do then? Like, Liam Lawson is a Red Bull guy through and through, has had Red Bull backing all the way. And, he's a talent that they've brought through their program, not because of an engine partner's, insistence on backing him, which, full credit to Yuki. He's a good driver and he's taken advantage of that opportunity. But, the idea that he's owed a promotion is not necessarily the case when there's commercial factors at play. It's the same reason that we said, why didn't they fire Checo earlier? Well, because he had his Mexican sponsors. And, the Formula One has never been a meritocracy. And to say that, if Yuki Tsunoda was inevitable, he would have made his name unstoppably, apparent in being someone that should be in a top seat. But he hasn't done that. And, he's been impressive on his days. He's had a really good season this year. I think he was pretty good actually last year too. Like he's improved. He's incrementally improved as he's been in Formula One, and you can't deny that. But what you can say is Liam Lawson has come in and done 11 races and been right on his tail. So obviously, if he's being given the opportunity to have 5 seasons embedded in a team and he hasn't been able to separate himself from Danny Ricciardo and Liam Lawson to the degree that, Red Bull are expecting, because they probably have very high expectations. He didn't make himself inevitable for that seat. Add in the Honda ties and the fact that they're leaving the team, and the fact that Liam Lawson has been a loyal Red Bull guy from the very beginning and has been promoted by them through like DTM and Super Formula and everything else, waiting for this opportunity. And I think it makes sense. I think he's potentially, and this is like, we don't know, potentially a higher ceiling driver than Yuki in the future. I think that you put him in this opportunity and he may excel, he may fail, but at least you know what you have. Where if you got to the end of 2025 and he had another year in the Toro, I will always call it a Toro Rosso. I don't care what they call themselves. They're Toro Rosso to me. If you have like another year there and you still don't really know what you have in Liam Lawson because you're benchmarking him again against Yuki, and then Yuki leaves, so you're benchmarking him against Hajar. Well, what do you really have there? At least now they know after 2025, do we have a prospect here? Do we have somebody that we can rely on and sign for future years and future seasons and keep in this program in the top team? Or do we go outside? Do we look for somebody else from an existing team? Do we go hard after George Russell? Do we go, after Carlos Sainz, get him out of Williams? Whatever. Like, they now know what they have. Where with Yuki, they kind of already know what they have, and he's probably leaving as a matter of, Honda in the future. So it's absolutely a no-brainer to me to pick Lawson, and I know that disappoints people who cheer for Yuki. I just think that, Red Bull has given him, if you include this upcoming season with RB, 5 seasons, and they don't owe him that promotion per se. He's one of 20 drivers on the grid. He's still going to be around. He's still going to have the opportunity to show his quality, to show his talent. The question becomes, is there an opening at Aston Martin? Because Stroll is there for eternity, and technically Alonso is there till the end of 26. What happens there? Do Honda power another team? Is there any sort of movement on any of the other teams that are aligned with other manufacturers to get a second Honda team? And does Yuki go there? I don't see it, but there will be something that happens. Yuki will be on the grid in 26 somewhere. We'll see where that will be. And I would imagine that with Honda's significant pull, if it came down to it, Yuki versus Alonso, and the engines power the car, is Lawrence going to choose Alonso or Yuki? He's going to choose what Honda tells him to if he wants his son in the car. So, yeah, I mean, as much as it sucks for Yuki, I do think it's the right choice. Will it work out though? I have no idea. I mean, maybe Lawson struggles just as badly as Gasly, Albon, and Perez have done, because that is a poison seat. Like, absolutely. But, I still think they have made the right choice. And I know, AJ, you can take it from here and you can tear down everything I've just said. But, that's just how I feel about it. I think that I like Lawson. I think he's an intriguing prospect, and I'm really looking forward to seeing him in the Red Bull. So, I hope he does well. So, full disclosure, like, I like the guy. I think that he's an exciting prospect. So I do think that I would have picked him if it was up to me. But, I understand that people have other opinions, and there's strong feelings about it.
AJ, so before we go to you, I did want to read a comment from Max on Flasher, and Max, thank you so much for contributing onto the show. So I didn't want to bring up this comment. You guys are great, but short measuring stick. In fact, Racing Bulls will have the shortest driver pairing as the tallest. I mean, it is what it is, that part. But then this part where you also said in the beginning, I am a Yuki fan and Liam fan, so I think Yuki should have gone in the summer break, if not Daniel, but I also think Liam will do a much better job than Yuki. I think, again, you said 11 races, right, Wave? My main thing is this. If Honda was still with Red Bull, we would have seen Yuki in that seat, because I know how Red Bull works. I know how Honda works. I know how money works. But that's not the case. So, AJ, my friend, you have the floor.
Yeah, so the thing is, it's a good thing you brought those comments up, because I was also going to highlight what Max is saying. But here's the thing for me, right? Double, from a purely business, old boys club, rich mentality standpoint, I agree Liam is the better shot. Liam is the better shot purely from a business perspective, and with the situation going on with Honda. In that sense of how we are looking at it, if I were to put everything else aside and just think about it from a business perspective, I would have gone Liam as well, right? Now, there's so many other things that come into play with this, right? There's a reason why a lot of people are upset that Yuki was not given a shot and that he was hard done by Red Bull. First things first, in reference to the fact that he's a Honda driver. We have seen drivers cut ties with the academies and whoever has brought them up before, time and time again, if they perform well and they can do that, right? We have seen that happen multiple times in the past. Same thing could happen if Yuki had done well. But then again, the issue then lies is that Yuki should have been given a shot earlier this season, which then drags Checo back into the scenario. And it just goes to show that Red Bull's second seat, in my opinion, will never succeed because they only give a damn about the money there. The second seat is purely business and marketing. Nothing else matters to these guys. They have Max, they have the number one. Until Max leaves, they're sorted. But when Max goes, they will crumble because they have not had anyone there in the second seat. They have not let anyone develop. And the worst part about it is they had Yuki there. They said De Vries is going to come in and be our second driver if he can beat Yuki. Didn't do squat. Yuki annihilated De Vries. Then they said, okay, it's fine. We'll dump Yuki. We'll put Danny Rick in the car. If he does well against Yuki, he gets the promotion. Doesn't do squat. Yuki annihilates Danny Rick again. Throw Liam in at the end of the season. Again, they're like, oh, this is an audition between two people. Realistically, everyone knew it wasn't an audition between two people. It was just to see whether Liam had what it took to jump into an F1 car. Let's be very point blank realistic. It was just to see whether he has what it takes in an F1 car to do it. Because yes, even though I agree that Lawson is good, he is talented, but he has not done anything in his time since he has come on that has been wow, absolutely talented. He has not set himself apart from any other new rookie who has come in this season. Bamman has come in this season and done a brilliant job, right? Any one of the rookies who have made the step from F2 into F1 this season have all done a brilliant job with adapting to the car, which is why, to me, Lawson has not done anything that's a wow factor that sets him ahead of Yuki. He barely beat Yuki throughout the entire time while they were together. He still barely beat Yuki. So if you're talking about from a pure racist perspective, from a pure racing perspective, at this moment in time, right now, you remove yourself from the business element and the toxicity that is Red Bull, yes, Yuki deserves that second seat. Yuki deserves that second seat over Lawson at any point in time. Right? Like that's just it for me. Because I have not seen enough from Lawson to make it like, wow. Again, don't get me wrong. I like Lawson. He is very talented. But he hasn't given me that wow factor that, when Oscar came in, we were like, yes, there's something there.
I don't know. I think he has in his wheel-to-wheel battles. The stuff with Checo was pretty funny. I think that he's set himself on a course where he's put in some good performances in situations where not a lot was expected of him. And one thing that I've noticed that Red Bull's already doing is they're setting expectations lower for him. Like they're trying to say, Max is not his benchmark, where they're not like, and that's fair. I mean, that seat has been poisoned for a reason. But I do think he's been impressive just in how good he's been right off the hop to be as close to, like, let's face it, he did as well as Danny Rick did in that seat and probably better. But Danny Rick's a guy who was driving the car from preseason testing right through. Like, I do think that there's a lot to be said for jumping in and performing without being embedded in the team. for the whole season that does stand out. And I do think that, Yuki has done a lot to outperform expectations this year too. I really do think that they might have caught on to something special. And I know that you say that, Behrman and the other folks that have come in, Colapinto, had their moments.
Okay.
Have had their moments where they've looked incredibly impressive too. And they've had their moments where they've, shown that they can hang. But one of the things that I think is really cool about Liam Lawson is like, who goes off and does DTM and almost wins it, and then goes off and does Super Formula, and then comes in and jumps in. Like, the guy is like just jumping from thing to thing, and he just excels at it in a way that I don't think any other junior driver is willing to do. Like, we saw one of the big shots that came in, the 04 Share won F2, and he basically like didn't do anything for 2 years, waiting for a Formula One seat until it was too late. And then he was yesterday's news, and now he's, starting up with a startup IndyCar team next year. And he was like the hot property like 3 or 4 years ago, like coming up, where Liam has just been like, screw it, I'm going to go race stuff, and hasn't been sitting as a test driver. He's been doing it. So I do admire that to a certain extent, when guys on the Formula One track go and do other stuff. So that's part of the reason that I like Liam and want him to do well. But that's different.
No, I fully agree with that. Like, in that sense, what he has done, I fully admire him for doing it. Again, don't get me wrong. My frustration with the situation has nothing to do with Liam, because I think he's great. Like, he does have the potential. I just think, look, he has time, right? He has time on his side. That's where I'm coming from.
But AJ, does he have time though? Because you're now racing against Max Verstappen. You're not racing against any other driver. You're not going to be compared with Max Verstappen. And we've seen what's happened to other drivers with Max Verstappen. That is my worrisome. Can this crumble a young man's career? That's my issue with this a little bit. Yeah.
No, that's perfect, because I was actually just going to lead into that as well. Because when I say he has time, what I meant was he has time in a V-car. He has time in a Toro Rosso. Right? He's young. He had time there to develop and to grow into something even better. Right? Look at George. George paid his dues in Williams and then came up. Charles paid his dues in Alfa Romeo and he came up. Every driver who has a ceiling that we see is really high has paid their dues and come up, right? Max is a 1 in 100 like shot to happen, and then you've got Antonelli right now, and the only reason Antonelli is even thrown into the place is because Toto still has PTSD from losing Max. That's essentially it. He just has PTSD, so he was like, oh no, the next generational talent, Lewis is leaving, what am I going to do? I'm going to chuck him into the seat. Done. Bye-bye. But yeah, so going back to this entire Lawson situation, I think
we need that cut out.
I think this entire thing with the Lawson situation, he had time, right? But now that you're throwing him into that Red Bull seat, you are just recycling that same systematic problem with your junior drivers. You're going to chew them up and throw him out. That was my worry with Lawson. Because yes, he's good. I admire what he's done outside F1, sure. But that, when you have the alarm bells ringing in your head, that the alarm bells are going off for me, because I'm like, this seems very much like a Pierre Gasly issue. Like, it just, I don't know, something about it feels like they're just going to chew him up and throw him out.
Yeah, and like you said, AJ, it's like with Pierre Gasly was able to go back into that Toro Rosso seat at the time and was able to develop and kind of regain his feet. And we saw that he got that podium in Brazil in 2019 I know there was a rogue Lewis Hamilton who did T-Bone and Alex Albon, but still he still got that and outdragged that Toro Rosso. But still, I think this, with Liam Lawson being promoted to Rebel, we can kind of link into the turnover of rookies into F1s. We have six rookies if we include Lawson, but he has had enough races to say that he's basically, if he was back a few years ago, he would have done a full F1 season. But no, we have Jack Doohan, who's going to drive for Alpine. We have Ollie Behrman, who will drive for Haas, who did stints for Haas and Ferrari during the year. We have Gabi Bortoleto for Sauber and Audi. We have Isaac Hadjar, who's replacing Lawson at RB. We have Kimi Antonelli, as AJ mentioned, and we have Liam Lawson. So we have 6 rookies, and it's going to be, I hope no one stalls it in the first race of Bahrain or Australia. But no, I don't think that's going to happen. But yeah, so do we want to kind of just generally just discuss how we think they're going to do, or do we who are we both most looking forward to seeing out of all those rookies at the start of the season? So Fly, I'll start with you.
Has to be Kimi. Has to be. He is replacing the GOAT of the sport. Kimi.
Kimi Räikkönen?
I don't know
Kimi
who that
Räikkönen's
is.
back?
Oh, you don't know who he is? No?
I don't know who that is. There's only one Kimi, and the last I heard, he's retired and looking after his son right now.
My apologies. He's replacing a Sir Lewis Hamilton. Let me say it correctly before I get blocked. He's replacing a Sir Lewis Hamilton. He's replacing, he's going from, he's not, no F1 experience. And if you want to tell me that F1 experience includes 2 practices, then I guess we're far ahead in between. To me, that's not experience. Going into that seat, you're now behind a George Russell that's been behind a Lewis Hamilton for 3 full seasons, and now he knows it's his team. I think George Russell knows now is his time. And I'm not only saying this because I'm a George guy, but I truly feel that maybe finally there's no misdirection on where they want to go with the car. And the conversation of like, oh my God, we won. How did we do this? We don't understand the car, but man, this is great. P1 and P2, like let's all go and celebrate. I think Kimi has Antonelli has the most pressure between all of them because listen, we're not gonna think that a Bortoleto in an Audi, right? Is that what he's driving now, right? Or in a Sauber, or however you want to say, is gonna do any pressure. We know what Oliver Berman is, and the upside to that is immense, right? Isaac Hadjar, V-carb, okay. You know what I'm saying? So to me, it's Antonelli. To me, not that he has the pressure, but I feel like he has the most to prove because he's gonna have the car and he's gonna have the driver next to him, and he's gonna have Toto. And I think Toto has to bounce back, not only with the direction of positivity for Mercedes, but they need to finally figure out what's wrong with this car. And I feel like, going into the new regs after this season, why not better opportunity with a lineup of George and whoever he selected? I'm not going to say the K word because AJ gets upset. But yeah, to me, it's Antonelli without question.
Yeah, and I think I hope Toto will definitely nurture Antonelli, and George will definitely be there to support him. And we have Bottas as well, we'll mention a bit later, but to help him and support him. And I just hope because he had a very good junior series record, and I think F2 there was all the hype when Antonelli was going to do that Monza practice session, and then he bins it in the wall, and everyone's just jumped on the bandwagon because he's not made for F1. But the thing with F2 is, for me, is F2 is a lottery. It's a spec series, but also their setups and so forth. Prema, the team who's usually nails the new cars, there was a new car this year and they didn't get the setup right, and they couldn't maximize it. So Antonelli couldn't reflect his potential, and we saw how he was in the wet in Silverstone. He absolutely destroyed the field in Silverstone in the wet. But I do think, it's going to be interesting to see how Antonelli goes. Like AJ mentioned, it's definitely Toto's had the experience with talking to the Verstappens and not being able to offer Verstappen a seat at the time because he had Rosberg and Hamilton back in 2015, 2016. So that's how Red Bull was able to snatch Max up. But yeah, my rookies I'm looking forward to is I want to see how Berman will do against Ocon. I think the Haas lineup is a very solid lineup. Berman, his stint he's done in both Ferrari and Haas was very impressive. I just hope his dad is able to manage the stress how we saw him on the cameras. But no, I think it's going to be and Bortoleto against Hulkenberg. The thing with Bortoleto and Hulkenberg is I think Hulkenberg is going to will comprehensively be the number one driver in that situation. But I do think Bortoleto being away in that Sauber is no one's going to really expect that Sauber to be anything special. I think if he can get a few points or try and be close to Hulkenberg in qualifying and try and snatch a few points, I think that's a great season for him. I think it's basically to bed him into that team and get ready for 2026 when that becomes the fully Audi works team. He was brought in from McLaren and he's basically their Audi's young driver, and I think that probably will do him the good. But Double Wade, what rookie are you most interested in doing well, or do you think might need a bit of time to get used to F1?
Well, I do think that the narrative is interesting, because here we are talking about, Liam Lawson not being ready after 11 races, but apparently, Antonelli is ready after one uneven Formula 2 season. And maybe I'm an idiot and he'll be fine. It's not the first time that someone really young has come in. Yeah, 63. Yeah, not the first time someone who's come in, really young and just blown the doors off and been seen as inevitable, like Kimi Räikkönen, the real Kimi, what was exactly that. Like, he came in with some minuscule number of car races under his belt in 2001 and just impressed the heck out of everyone. And everyone was criticizing their decision to bring him in, and he was in a McLaren the next year. So by all means, maybe Antonelli is another Kimi. But I think that I think
the joke.
Yeah, I think that it's going to be super interesting because there's a lot of uncertainty when you put a rookie into a top team, where, as Rory and Fly, you were both saying, nobody really cares about Steak and Shake and Toro Rosso, like nobody really cares about, what they do at the back. Like, their benchmark is their teammate, like Haas and Berman. Like, he's gonna have his little battle with Ocon, and they might mention it for 5 minutes. But Antonelli's gonna be on the sharp end. It's like how Piastri came in. Like, you're gonna be under scrutiny right from the very beginning, and Lawson too. Like, those two are really the ones that are gonna be under fire. And the other three will be graded on a curve. Or the other four, they're going to be graded on a curve based off of how they do against their teammate, and are they learning, and how much do they crash, and all that regular rookie stuff that rookies that come in and drive for crap teams always get evaluated on. Like, how often do you crash? How close to your teammate? What's the qualifying record? All this stuff. Where Antonelli and Lawson are just going to be in at the deep end and expected to perform because they're in cars where 8th place is not a good weekend. Like that's not going to be good enough. So, yeah, I mean, all the pressure is on them, and we'll see how they cope with it. As for George helping Antonelli, I mean, maybe he'll be giving him a helping hand with like the knife in his other hand. I don't know. Like, George is ready to lead that team, and he's not going to be there to help the kid seemingly
He is not there to
replace him.
babysit Wave. That's for a fact.
Yeah.
He's not gonna tell him how to double clutch.
let's not forget that George, his future's up in the air, right? Like, is he going to leave
Great
that
point.
team? Like,
absolutely.
or is he going to go somewhere else? So I don't think that George has a lot of incentive to help this kid. I really don't. And that's Formula One, man. Like, that's the reality of the situation. Is you're not there to help your teammate, and if they hired a kid, then I'm sure that George is just sitting there like this, like just rubbing his hands together, just being like, all right, this is it. This is my time now. And sure enough, like, maybe it'll be a situation like Coulthard at McLaren, where it was like, as soon as Kimi got there, it was apparent that Kimi was the better option, but it was already David's team. So in that first year in 2002, David got the better of him, but then in 2003, Kimi was a championship threat. So, I'm sure that Russell is going to try and beat the doors off this kid. And that's just racing, man. That's how it goes. There are no friends in Formula One, not least on the other side of the garage. So I don't necessarily agree with that comment, but if Antonelli's this good, then we'll know really quickly. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a heck of a season next year. There's so many questions just up and down the grid, and so many things that could change just throughout the season. Like, if anyone stumbles, or if there's any changes, like, there could be an upheaval in 26 like we've never seen. Like, and the changing of the order too. Like, it just there's so much up in the air. It's fascinating. So I can't wait for it to come.
So I've actually done some research. This podcast has serious information now about contracts. So I have gone and looked for the driver contract expiry dates. Now, some of these may be a bit out of place, but at Mercedes, George Russell is out of contract at the end of 2025 along Kimi Antonelli. So that's what Double Wave mentioned. We have Leclerc and Hamilton at Ferrari is to 2026 and beyond. Well, Leclerc is beyond 2026 because Ferrari don't like giving us contract details. We have McLaren's both Lando's 2027 and Oscar 2026, so that's something to think about. Pierre Gasly at Alpine is 2026 and Doohan 2025, but we don't know if Doohan has a 6-year race contract or if he's going to get replaced mid-season. We have Haas and Ocon are both on to 2026, which probably will be extended anyway. Williams, both drivers 2026. Both Audi and Sauber, Bortoletto is 2026 for now, but I think Hulkenberg's on a multi-year deal, so that's about 2027 or 2026 either. I keep forgetting 2025 exists for some reason. That's why. And then VCarb, they're both on 1-year deals because Yuki was signed on a 1-year extension. Aston Martin 2026, but we know Lance Stroll is there till Aston Martin till the Earth explodes. And Red Bull 2028 for Verstappen, as we always know that, and Lawson 2025. So, like we mentioned, 2026 could be the end of 2025 going into 26, and the end of 26 could be we could be like this season where we could have all the teams just changing drivers.
So yeah. I have to say, like, I could have done without Flavio coming back to Formula One ever. But one thing that I do miss is the fact that he always has one driver dangling from a string, like, at all times. And sometimes he'll flip them, but he's always got one driver where he's just got like the sword hanging over the head at all times. It's just his way of working, and it makes for fascinating headlines.
And unfortunately, we know that's Jack Doohan.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's no secret. I feel for Jack, but he has. Oh boy, yeah. Oh, and me being in Roy, me being an Alpine guy, that's going to be something to, especially the turmoil with team principles and all this other stuff. It's like, listen, Alpine's going to Merc, bro. That's probably the greatest news ever since the history of I don't know what. We don't need this type of drama heading into 26, bro. We don't need this, but it's gonna be there because Franco Colapinto money, bro. It's knocking on the doors and give me all the churrascos and all the chimichurris you can make me, bro. Because that's what it's about.
So, AJ, what's your take on the new all these new youngsters on the grid that are arriving, or that could be interesting? Is there any that stands out to you?
Yeah. So it's not whether there's any stand out to me. That I'll be keeping my eye on all of them for multiple reasons. But before we dive into that, I just want to give Max like a shout out. 2025 will no doubt be an absolutely amazing season. I doubt we're going to see as much variability as we did this year. Um, I don't know why, but it's just what I'm feeling right now. Um, and yeah, I mean, for now, Liam doesn't put his F1 car into the wall like the others do. But again, that's for now. Let's see how he does in a Red Bull. But with that being said, if I'm looking at all the young drivers right now, um, of course, with my Ferrari bias, I'm going to be most excited about Bamman. I'm looking forward to see how he develops with Haas under Komatsu and with Ocon. I think that's a really good partnership down there. Um, and I'm pretty sure, like you guys said, George is just going to pin Antonelli to the wall as much as he can and extract
Well,
the
that was double
performance out of the
weight.
car.
Let's get it corrected. That was double weight. I didn't say that in that same sentence, but that was double weight that said that.
But I think if we're really looking at it, the two that I'm most intrigued about, or at least I will really be watching closely, um, would be Duhan and um, damn it, I can't remember his name now. I know his name, but it just slipped my mind. Duhan and Haja. Sorry. Duhan and Haja are the two that I would really be keeping my eye on. Mainly because of how volatile those seats are at this point in time. Haja has had a good season. Duhan definitely, he has done a good job as a reserve so far. Um, Very likable character. Uh, but these are the two guys in what I think are the two most volatile seats among the rookies. And it's going to be interesting to see how they fare with their significantly more established teammates. Um, you've got Gasly, who I cannot stop raving about, because I feel he has had a very underrated season this year. And I do not have too much of an opinion about Bortoleto as of now, as of yet. It'll be interesting to see how he develops against Hulkenberg because Hulkenberg has also had a very good season in the Haas. Um, I think outside Charles and Max, my next two drivers would be Hulk and Pierre for sure, easily. And yeah, I think that's kind of why, mainly because of the Duhan, Flavio, Pierre situation. That's one that I'm really going to be keeping my eye out on. And the Toro Rosso mess that is Red Bull, the entire toxicity of that team. It'll be interesting to see how Hadja performs. I I'm hoping we see Paul Arons in F1 at some point because I think he's good. And if what you guys are alluding to of another whole shakeup in 2026, I don't think it's going to be long before we see him in the cars. So yeah, Yuki and Gasly would be great again, Max, but where are they going to team up in the Astons? I don't think so. Like, where are we going to see Yuki and Gasly paired up again? It's a nice partnership to think about, but where? I just don't see it happening. Yeah. So I hope that answers your question, Rory.
Well, speaking of Pierre Gasly and Yuki Tsunoda being social media stars, Valtteri Bottas is back at Mercedes, the king of the social media. What's next? He's at Mercedes. He's returned. Do you know that scene from Muppets? Like, from is it Muppets Most Wanted or the one the Muppets movie? A sequel. Sequels never end the way we think they're going to end. But yeah, Valtteri Bottas has returned to Mercedes as reserve driver after being not like being after calling his calling his time at Alfa Romeo and then Sauber. We're not going to call it what it's actually called, but he called it a mistake. So he's gone back to Mercedes, where he won many Grand Prix podiums. He became Porridge 2.0 at the time. He thought he could challenge Lewis Hamilton, but he just became. He was a solid number 2 driver, and he kind of anyone who's we kind of bring back. Sorry, Checo, but it was like we all kind of remembered how actually good Valtteri Bottas was because he actually made Q3 every time he was in the Mercedes. So yeah, this is my personal opinion on this. I think this is Bottas just being a reserve driver like Esteban Gutierrez, who we just see dragged out of the Mercedes closet every time to do show runs or just turn up and stand beside Toto Wolff. But I think Bottas will be doing a lot more brand activations. He'll do a lot of sim work probably for them. And I think this is just I just think it's just here. I don't think just use it as a stepping stone. Maybe if he gets the Cadillac seat, or he can just make coffees and make TikToks in the paddock. So is everyone on the consensus that this is just a safe move for Bottas and he's just going to just mosey along in the paddock for the next 2 years?
Rory, you also forgot to mention the Gluteus Maximus calendars are now that's going to be appearing from the Mercedes garages. I kind of assume. By the way, this feels like a much more happier moment of getting together than Carlos Sainz going to Williams. I just definitely want to say that part. I think, and overall, like, great for Valtteri, man. I mean, I don't know at his age and where he is in his racing career, what other place he could have gone, right? Probably not in a seat, but to be at reserve again with Toto again. I mean, listen, he posted this photo on his social media. Look at this. There's no Lewis in there. There's nobody else, but just him and Toto with the trophy over place. Like that's where you would probably want him to be. You know,
well, Manny, Toto is Valtteri's manager.
Well, there you go. I did not know that. There you go. And then it just feels like it was bound to happen. I believe Mercedes had Mick as a reserve driver last year. That only lasted, I don't know how long it lasted, even though they did say he was always in the factory trying to work out some laps to give stuff to Lewis and George. I'm sure that both of them were like, yeah, thanks, Mick, but we don't need this. But going forward, I think Bottas is going to give a lot. Well, I would assume, right? Toto wants to kind of mold Antonelli, and he's going to be that voice to Bottas, and Bottas will give that to Antonelli as a driver, while Toto does it as a team principal. Like, to me, he brought him in more to mold Antonelli, not for the sake of like, team base, right? Because George is going to listen, but George knows what he has to do. Antonelli's so new to this. So why not have Toto and Bottas both to mold Antonelli into that driver that Toto wants him to become? So I think it's a great match overall.
I think quickly, just to
go ahead, AJ.
Sorry, yeah, just to fly up on that. I think the system that they've built around Antonelli to support him is it's I think one of the most supportive structures that you have right now. Because if you think about it, you've got Bono back there. You have Toto, and you've also now got Valtteri, who are all going to be there supporting Antonelli. So they don't really need to rely on George as much because they have 3 people who are very, very experienced. of course, the relationship that they had with Lewis, that Bono and Bottas both had, that's going to be big. That's going to be really big. So I think that in that sense, they have really cushioned and set Antonelli up with the right support system moving forward. This Bottas call, I couldn't see it be any more perfect.
So for full disclosure, I'm just going to declare this is not a Mercedes F1 hat. This is a Windward Racing IMSA hat. So this is not a declaration of fandom or anything. This is an IMSA hat. My reaction to Bottas test driver can be summarized in 3 letters. MEH. Meh. And that's all I have to say.
Fair. But yeah, I think this is what we're all going to cover today. Thanks for joining. We're not going to call the podcast mid because we're not going to go on double waves words. We're going to call it greatness. Great. That was
we're going to call it Checo's legacy.
Checo's legacy.
By the way, I never got to say my phrase for Checo for his career, and I hate to say it, but to me, he will be known as another Max Verstappen. I don't want to say victim. That sounds horrible. I want to say another Max Verstappen casualty. That's what I want to say. Because, man, the guy's vicious, bro. Oh, good luck. No. Good luck. No. By the way, guys, please, you do see our social media stuff at the bottom here on the banner. Please give us a follow on IG. We're on that Threads. I mean, I believe my guys here are on Threads 24/7, like as far as I know. Also, our YouTube. And so, yeah, so just give us a follow. If you have any questions or anything like that, please make sure to let us know.
Yeah, leave comments. We're going to, in the new year, definitely, I'm going to try to get more active in the comments, replying to anyone who has questions or so. But like you said, we're on Threads, our usernames. We are on your favorite audio platforms, which is Spotify, Apple, and any other platform. Or is that right, Fly? Just
the basics for now. We'll get more stuff going by the new year. By the way, Happy New Year. We won't. I doubt we'll be doing another show before the first, man. And yeah, man, I think it's gonna be a season upcoming that we're gonna have lots of front team drama. It's gonna be fun.
Definitely Happy New Year, man, because I think we've got a bunch of cool topics lined up for the new year. I'm looking forward.
Wave. I need Wave to be well rested. I need him to be relaxed. All right. I need him not to be pickering fights with people on our panel. Okay, let them say what they want to say. There's no race next week. I don't need you to go at these people that, in retro sense, not I'm saying that they don't have a right to an opinion, but come on, man. Like, we kind of know their ways. So please don't take it personal. It's okay. Not everyone's perfect, though. Roy, you want to close us out?
Yeah, that knows. I am going to take over from Backseat and say, well, Backseat has been in the space. But anyway, I call it space, whatever. Let's just end the show. Thanks for listening.